Hey you guys, this is Scoop Malaire here, and today I want to tell you guys about the first time that I ever felt cool. Now I got to give you some of the backstory because some of this stuff almost would seem too surreal to believe. So let me start off by telling you that my father was a collector. When he was young, he worked as an usher at a movie theater and he loved the job, fell in love with movies in general, and that was his big passion. So when we were growing up, we were the beneficiary of this passion in that he collected all of these soundtracks from movies from the 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way through when we were born. And all of these records were now in our closet. And no joke, we had at least 7 or 8,000 different albums in our household when he decided that he was going to open up a booth at a flea market, call it Stu's Oldie Goldies, and start selling these and maybe trading in records and really growing something out of it. The problem is my father opened up Stu's Oldie Goldies in possibly the worst geographical location where you could have done so. This was in Oakland Park, Florida, which is pretty much a suburb of Fort Lauderdale, on the wrong side of the tracks. And let me tell you, this Payless Flea Market is what it was called, and it was completely an indoor flea market where these records did not have a clientele walking around. And my father was there for the full first weekend without selling a record and the full second weekend without selling a record. And if I'm not mistaken, he has signed a couple of month-long lease with this flea market to have this same permanent booth. But on the second weekend, he met a guy who dealt in bootleg 8-track tapes of soul music, which is what the people that were walking around were listening to. So soul music is what people would call R&B, or pretty much the beginning, the infancy of rap was going on at this time. And my father found an inn where he could be buying these bootleg 8-track tapes. This was even before cassettes, just as cassettes were hitting the scene. So he did that, and he started buying these bootleg 8-track tapes, which were obviously bootlegs, but he was able to sell tapes for, I think the 8 tracks were $4 a piece or 3 for $10 at a time when these same 8 tracks would be selling for $12 or $15 in the stores. And he grew the business and did really well with it. And it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday flea market. And my dad became so good at knowing which music would be popular with customers and telling the bootlegger which different tracks to put together. Because, I mean, if you're sitting here bootlegging a tape, what's the problem with mixing different artists together? So they would have things like Disco 67 or Rock 48, and all these different mixed tapes would be exactly what the customers wanted, but all in one 8-track. And he would do this with a lot of different songs, a lot of different artists, even do it with some of the older artists, because we had all kinds of customers coming in that were into other things like Lightnin' Hopkins and B.B. King and Muddy Waters for the blues fans. And then you had the Aretha Franklins and the Mighty Clouds of Joy and everything else for the Sunday crowd. But my dad got to know all of these people and their likes and tastes in music, and he also was able to become so well versed at speaking with them, even though they would probably otherwise not have a whole lot in common. But my dad grew this passion for the music that they were into, and all of a sudden he bonded with the customers in such a way that I found so cool. And I remember at the time being really proud of that aspect of my dad, that he could talk to anybody and get along comfortably with them. And one of the cool things was that when my brother got his license, my older brother, they actually entrusted the flea market to us on Sundays. And my older brother, myself, and my younger brother would go to the flea market, and we would be the ones talking to customers and selling the tapes. And it was so cool to be a part of that and to be an adult, to be 13 or 14 years old, and to be right behind the counter or there fixing the tapes and talking to people. And what happened is one day, I'll never forget this. And it's funny because the band actually kind of came back into my own experiences later in life when I was at festivals, and this band would perform at some of them. But there's a band called Parliament. Sometimes they go by Parliament Funkadelic or just Funkadelic, but in this case they were called Parliament. And these, I think it was 2 guys, came in and they asked me if we had the new Parliament 8-track. And I said, no, that hasn't come out yet. Nobody's got the Parliament 8-track. And they were looking at each other and they're talking to each other. And then one said, I bet you I could find that 8-track. And I said, no, nobody's got that yet. Nobody's got that yet. It's brand new. It's hot. Nobody's got it yet. And the guy says, I bet you $10 I can find that. And I'm like, there's no way. Okay, I'll bet you $10. And I bet this guy $10. And I had seen them before, and both of them had bought tapes from us before. But it wasn't like we actually knew each other. But yeah, we bet $10 on whether or not Parliament 8-track was going to be something they would find, and we agreed that by the next day they'd come back by. Well, he came back by in about 20 minutes, and there wasn't anybody else at that flea market that sold these types of tapes. He had the 8-track tape. I am sure it was sitting in his car the whole time. He had probably bought it somewhere else. Maybe his friend wanted a copy. I don't know. But anyways, when he walked back by and showed me the tape, I didn't even question it. I was like, well, I guess you got me. And I pulled the money out of my pocket and gave him $10. And when he took the money and looked at it, looked at his friend, almost like they weren't sure I was going to come through. And as they're walking away, he said, "Yo, Slim's all right." And I'm telling you, those 4 words, they still stick with me to this day. Yo, Slim's all right. And that had to have been the first time that I felt cool. And it felt significant, to be important, to matter, to just belong. And again, it kind of goes to that same feeling, whether it was instilled from my father early in and seeing him be able to get along with absolutely anybody, or just the fact that there's so many great people out there that if you are always open and able to have conversations with people, sometimes you never quite know. Now that conversation, that guy is not going to remember that having ever happened. But again, it meant a whole lot to me because it was the first time I ever really felt cool. Anyways, as I think of other little things that have happened or are happening now, I'd love to share them with you. Just seeing that there are people interested in following along makes me want to keep doing this. So please subscribe, like, and share for even more Scoop My Lair.